The city was dead. Smoke rose from broken towers and the streets were covered with ashes. The war had ended only days ago, but the silence it left behind was worse than the sound of battle. No voices, no laughter, no songs, only ruins. In the middle of that silence stood the alien princess. She was young, not much older than 20 years in human measure, yet the crown of her people already sat heavy on her head. Once she had walked through shining halls wearing silk robes with guards following her every step. Now she stood barefoot on broken stones, her dress torn, her crown lost in the rubble. In her arms lay the only treasure she had left, her baby. A small boy with soft skin and bright eyes wrapped in a piece of cloth torn from her gown. He cried, and the sound cut through the empty city like a blade. His wailing voice echoed against broken walls, a cry of life in a place filled with death. The princess tried to calm him. She rocked him gently, her arms trembling with exhaustion. She whispered words in her own language, soft as wind, songs that her nurses used to sing when she was small. But the baby did not stop. He cried harder, kicking his little legs, his face red with hunger and fear. The princess's heart broke. She was a ruler's daughter, trained to speak with kings, to hold ceremonies, to smile before her people. But no one had taught her how to be a mother. No one had told her what to do when her child would not stop crying. She had always been surrounded by maids and caretakers. Now she was alone. Alone with a child who needed her more than anyone ever had. Her hands shook as she tried again, pressing the baby against her chest. She whispered, "Hush, little star. Hush," in her tongue. But her voice cracked with tears, and the child's cries grew sharper. The sound tore at her soul. She felt shame and fear stronger than any battlefield could give. She was not afraid for herself. She was afraid for him, for the small life she carried, for the child who had no one else in the galaxy. If she failed him, he would not survive. The princess sank to her knees on the cold stones. Dust clung to her gown, her hair fell loose around her face, and her shoulders shook. She looked at the baby through blurry eyes, whispering broken apologies. "I am sorry, I am sorry." Her tears fell on his small cheeks, mixing with his cries. The ruins were silent except for the child. But then, a sound. Footsteps. The princess froze. Her eyes went wide, her arms tightening protectively around the baby. Fear rushed through her veins. Was it a soldier? Was it the enemy? From the smoke, a figure appeared, a tall shape, carrying a weapon. A human soldier. Her breath caught in her throat. Humans were the enemy, the destroyers, the ones her people had cursed in every song of war. She had seen them fight, had seen their fire tear through the skies, and now, one of them stood only a few steps away. The soldier was dirty, his armor cracked, his rifle hanging at his side. His face was tired, his eyes shadowed by war. But when those eyes looked at her, they did not burn with hate. They carried something else, something she could not name. He saw the baby in her arms, the crying, the princess holding on, desperate and lost. The soldier stopped walking. Slowly, carefully, he lowered his weapon. His hands lifted, empty, showing he meant no harm. He crouched, keeping his distance as though he were approaching a frightened bird. The baby's cries echoed louder in that moment, filling the air. The soldier's eyes softened. His lips moved, his voice low and calm. The princess did not understand the words, but she felt the tone. It was gentle. It was not the voice of an enemy. Her chest tightened with confusion. She wanted to run, to hide, but her legs were weak. Her arms shook from holding the baby too long. She looked at the soldier, then at her crying child. For the first time since the palace fell, she felt something strange. Not safety, not trust, but a small spark of hope. And in the silence of the ruined city, as the baby's cry filled the air, the soldier stayed where he was, waiting, patient, and unthreatening. The princess did not know why. She only knew one thing. She was not as alone as she had thought. The princess held her child tighter, her arms stiff with fear. The human soldier knelt a few steps away, his hands open, his weapon hanging useless at his side. She had been taught that humans were merciless. Yet the man before her did not look like the monster from war stories. He looked tired. His eyes had shadows, but his face was calm, almost gentle. The baby cried louder, his voice raw with need. Each sound stabbed her heart like a blade. She bounced him softly, whispering desperate words, but nothing worked. Her milk had dried with her fear and hunger. The child was starving, and she could do nothing. Her pride fought inside her chest. She was the daughter of an emperor. She was supposed to be strong, unshaken, above fear. But her body trembled. Her tears betrayed her, and her helplessness burned. She could not save her own baby. The soldier's gaze never left the child. He moved slowly, pointing to the baby, then to himself. He touched his chest with his hand, then stretched his palm outward, in a gesture she did not fully know but could guess. "Let me help." The princess's breath caught. Could she trust him? Her people had said humans only knew how to destroy. They burned cities, they crushed armies, they enslaved the weak. But here was one, kneeling in the dust, making no demand, asking only with his eyes. She shook her head, clutching her baby closer. The soldier didn't push. He stayed where he was, waiting, patient. The baby screamed harder. His small fists pounded weakly against her chest. His cries cracked, turning into broken sobs. His tiny body shook. The princess's tears spilled freely now. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "Please, don't leave me. Please." The soldier's jaw tightened. His eyes glistened as he watched. Slowly he reached to his belt and pulled out something, a small pouch. He opened it and brought out a piece of bread, rough and dry. He broke it gently, then held it up, showing her. The princess blinked. She had not eaten for days. Her stomach twisted at the sight of food, but it was not for her. She knew it would not feed a child. Still, the soldier was trying to show something. His hands moved carefully, showing that he had food, that he could share, that he wanted to give, not take. She looked at him, then at her child. Hunger gnawed at her own bones. She had been so proud, too proud to beg, too proud to fall before her enemies. But now her pride meant nothing. The baby's cries were breaking her heart, and the soldier's open hand looked like the only light in a sea of darkness. Her breath shook. She whispered to herself in her tongue, words her people used for courage. Then, slowly, with trembling hands, she loosened her grip. She extended the baby toward him. Her arms resisted, her whole body screaming against it. Every instinct told her she was giving her child to an enemy, but her heart whispered something else, that maybe, just maybe, this man was not like the others. The soldier's face softened as he reached forward. He did not snatch or grab. He held out his hands, palms upward, waiting for her to place the baby into them. His movements were careful, as if the child was the most fragile treasure in the galaxy. The moment her baby left her arms, her chest felt empty. Fear swallowed her. Her hands hovered, ready to snatch him back if the soldier made one wrong move. But he didn't. He cradled the baby against his chest, his large hands steady, his arms strong but gentle. The crying continued for a moment, sharp and loud. Then the soldier began to hum. It was not a song of war. It was not even words, just a low, steady tune, soft as a breeze. His voice was rough, cracked with age and battles, but there was warmth in it. The baby stirred. His cries weakened, his little fists unclenched. Slowly, his sobs faded into soft hiccups. The child pressed his face against the soldier's armor, his breathing steadying. The princess stared, her mouth falling open. Her tears froze on her cheeks. For hours she had tried and failed. Yet this stranger, this enemy, had stilled the storm within her child with nothing but his voice. The soldier looked down at the baby and smiled faintly. His lips moved. "There you go. It's all right." The princess did not understand the words, but she understood the feeling, and for the first time since the fall of her world, silence wrapped around her child. The baby was quiet now, resting against the soldier's chest, his small breath warm on the man's armor. The sound of his soft hiccups was the most peaceful thing in that broken city. The soldier held him steady, swaying ever so slightly, still humming his strange, wordless tune. The princess watched, frozen. Her hands were empty, and she felt lost, without her child pressed against her heart. Fear gnawed inside her. She wanted to snatch the baby back, to never let him go again. But her legs felt weak, her heart torn between panic and hope. This was her son, the only heir to her fallen house, the only blood of her line left alive. And now he was in the arms of the enemy. Her throat tightened as memories rushed through her mind. She remembered her father's last command before the palace fell. Protect the child. Whatever happens, protect him. She had promised with her whole heart that she would. But now she felt like a failure. What kind of mother trusted her baby to a human soldier? Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. She whispered to herself, I cannot. I must not. Her voice cracked. The soldier glanced at her, his eyes calm, steady. He made no sudden move. He kept humming, his gaze flicking between her and the baby, as though to remind her that both were safe. The princess clenched her fists. She did not understand his words, but she understood the danger. She had seen humans burn cities with fire that rained from the skies. She had seen them march, merciless and strong, leaving nothing behind but ashes. And yet, here he was. One of them, holding her child as if he was something precious. She took a shaky step forward. Her voice trembled as she spoke in her own tongue, the words falling out like broken glass. Why? Why do you do this? The soldier tilted his head. He did not understand her, but he caught the question in her eyes. His expression softened. He whispered something she could not translate. His voice was quiet, but his tone was enough to calm her racing heart. The baby stirred, letting out a small whimper, and the soldier immediately shifted him with gentle care, patting his back with practiced ease. It was as though he had done this before, maybe for his own child, maybe for a sibling long ago. The princess's lips parted. Could it be? Did this human soldier know what it meant to be a parent? She had always believed humans were cold, ruthless. But this man, this enemy, was rocking her baby like a father. Her heart wavered. She sank to her knees again, her dress gathering dust and ashes. She pressed her hands to her face, tears leaking through her fingers. Shame burned through her. She was a princess, raised to be strong, yet here she was, broken, weak, begging silently in front of an enemy. Her body shook with sobs. I cannot even soothe my own child, she whispered to herself. I am unfit, unworthy. The soldier watched her. He did not laugh. He did not mock. Instead, he adjusted the baby, holding him close, and lowered himself until he was kneeling too. Now they were on the same level. The princess lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze through her tears. His expression was not cruel. It was filled with something she never expected to see in an enemy: understanding. He placed one hand lightly on his chest, then pointed to the baby, then back to her. His gesture spoke without words. He is safe. I promise. Her breath caught in her throat. Her heart wanted to believe him, but her fear was still strong. Could trust bloom between two enemies in the ruins of war? The baby sighed softly, finally drifting into sleep against the soldier's chest. The soldier glanced down at the small face, his own features softening. His lips curved into the faintest smile, tired but real. The princess's heart twisted. For the first time, she saw not a human soldier, not an enemy, but simply a man. A man who carried the weight of war in his eyes, yet still found space in his arms for a crying child. Her tears fell again, but this time they were not only of fear. They were of something else, something she dared not name yet. And though her mind screamed at her to distrust, to pull her baby back, her soul whispered a fragile truth. She was no longer alone. The ruins were silent except for the sound of the soldier's quiet humming. The baby rested peacefully now, his small head tucked against the human's chest, his breathing steady and calm. It felt unreal to the princess. Only moments ago, her son had been screaming in her arms, and now he slept, safe and warm, against the chest of a man she had been taught to fear. Her heart ached with a mix of emotions, relief, shame, and confusion all twisted together. She wanted to be grateful, yet fear clung to her soul like chains. What if this was a trick? What if the soldier only pretended kindness to take her child away? Her hands itched to grab her baby back, but something in the soldier's face stopped her. His expression was not hard or cruel. It was soft, almost tender. He looked down at her son with eyes that seemed older than war, eyes that had seen too much but still held a spark of gentleness. The princess's lips trembled. She whispered in her tongue, "Do you have children too?" She knew he could not understand, yet the question slipped from her heart. Perhaps it was easier to believe he knew the pain of a parent, the weight of responsibility, the fear of losing a child. The soldier shifted slightly, cradling the baby with surprising ease. His large hands looked rough, calloused from battle, but when they held her son, they were steady and careful, as if they had always belonged to such a task. His movements carried no hesitation, no threat, only care. The princess lowered her gaze, ashamed. She had failed where he succeeded. She was a mother by blood, but had not been able to quiet her child. Yet this man, a stranger and an enemy, had calmed him within moments. Her pride broke further. Her shoulders shook and she pressed her palms against the earth, dust clinging to her skin. "What kind of mother am I?" she whispered. "I cannot even soothe my own son." The soldier glanced at her when he heard her broken voice. He could not understand the words, but he understood her tone. He saw the tears on her cheeks, the way she bowed her head, the shame in her trembling body. His own chest tightened. Slowly, carefully, he leaned forward and extended one hand, not to take, not to demand, but to offer. He touched the ground with his palm first, showing humility. Then he lifted it slightly, turning his hand upward, a silent gesture that spoke. "You are not alone." The princess's breath caught. Her eyes widened at the simple act. No soldier had ever bowed to her people. No human had ever lowered themselves like that. Yet here he was, humbling himself in front of her, a broken princess in the dust. Her heart trembled. She looked at her baby sleeping peacefully, then back at the soldier. For the first time, she felt something other than fear. It was not trust yet, but it was close. The soldier continued humming. His tune was simple, almost childish, but there was strength in its softness. It wrapped around the princess like a blanket, easing the storm in her chest. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening. When she opened them again, her tears still flowed, but her voice steadied. She pressed her hand against her chest, then reached it outward toward him in a shaky gesture of her own. She had no words he would understand, but her action spoke clearly. "Thank you." The soldier's eyes softened even more. He gave a small nod, his lips pressing into the faintest smile. He pointed to the child, then to her, then back to himself, as if to say, "We are together in this moment." Her heart swelled painfully. She had thought herself utterly alone, wandering the ashes of her fallen kingdom. Yet here, in the arms of her enemy, her baby slept safe. And here before her a human soldier knelt, not as a conqueror but as a man who chose compassion. The princess lowered her head, tears sliding down her face. For the first time since the fall of her world, her body felt lighter, not safe, not free, but less alone. And though the city around them lay in ruins in that small circle of silence, something fragile and beautiful was born. Not peace, not yet, but a beginning. The baby slept, his soft breath steady against the soldier's chest. The ruins around them were quiet, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The soldier did not move quickly. He kept still, rocking gently, his eyes watching the small face in his arms. The war-torn man who had carried weapons and marched through fire now carried something far more fragile: life itself. The princess sat across from him, her gown dirty, her crown long gone, her hands trembling in her lap. She kept her eyes on her child, every breath sharp with fear and wonder. The enemy held her son, and yet the child looked peaceful. Her heart did not know whether to scream or to weep. She finally raised her eyes to the soldier. Her voice shook as she whispered in her tongue, "Why? Why are you helping us?" Of course, he did not understand her words, but he felt the weight behind them. He looked at her, his tired eyes searching hers, and he shook his head gently, almost as if to say, "Because I must." The princess tilted her head, trying to read him. His lips moved, and though she could not understand, the sound carried meaning. His tone was heavy with honesty. He touched the baby's tiny hand, then touched his own chest and looked at her again. She understood only pieces, but it was enough. He was saying the child mattered, that it did not matter which blood ran in his veins or which kingdom had fallen. A baby was still a baby. Her throat tightened. She hugged her arms around herself, whispering, "But we are enemies." The words were meant for her own heart, not for him. Yet the soldier seemed to understand even that. His eyes softened, his jaw tightening with silent thought. The soldier looked away, his gaze sweeping the broken streets. The ruins told the story of what his people had done. Shattered walls, burned homes, lifeless silence. His eyes darkened with guilt. He shifted slightly, adjusting the baby, and for a moment his shoulders sagged as if carrying an invisible weight. The princess saw it. She did not need to know his language to recognize sorrow. He was not proud of the destruction. He carried it like a shadow. Her heart wavered again. This was not the image of the enemy her father had painted for her. This was not a monster, not a destroyer without soul. This was a man who seemed as broken as she was. She touched her chest with her hand, then pointed. To him, her voice soft, fragile. Why? The soldier did not answer with words. Instead, he adjusted the baby once more, lifting the child carefully and rocking him in the same steady rhythm. The tiny head nestled into his neck, and the child's small hand gripped the edge of his armor as if it belonged there. The soldier's lips curved into the faintest smile. His eyes glistened, and he whispered something low, almost to himself. She could not translate it, but she felt its weight. It was the sound of a man remembering something long lost. Perhaps, she thought, he once held a child of his own. Perhaps he had known a family before the war. Perhaps the lullaby he hummed was a song from his past, sung by his mother or his lover. The princess pressed her hand to her lips, holding back tears. The image of this soldier, the supposed enemy, rocking her baby with such tenderness, broke something deep inside her. For a moment, she forgot about war. She forgot about her crown, her throne, and even her grief. All she saw was a man holding her child as though he was the most precious thing in the galaxy. The silence stretched between them, heavy yet gentle, fragile yet powerful. At last, the soldier looked at her again, his lips pressed into a firm line, his eyes steady. He touched the child's back softly, then lifted his free hand and gestured, first to her, then to himself, then to the sleeping child. The message was clear. Right now, we are not enemies. Right now, we are only two souls caring for the same life. Her breath hitched. Tears filled her eyes once more, but these were different. They were not tears of fear. They were tears of something she had not felt since before the war began: hope. The princess bowed her head, her voice breaking as she whispered the words in her own language. "Thank you." The soldier did not understand, but when he heard the soft tone, when he saw her lowered head, he gave a small nod in reply. And in that moment, Among the ashes of two broken worlds, they shared something stronger than hatred. They shared humanity. The soldier sat quietly with the child in his arms. The ruins around them stretched endlessly, a graveyard of stone and ash. Smoke still rose from broken towers, and the air carried the smell of fire and metal. He looked at it all, and his face grew heavy, lined with sorrow. The baby's soft breathing against his chest reminded him of something he had tried to bury long ago. A memory flickered. Small fingers gripping his own, laughter echoing in a home far away. His throat tightened. His eyes stung. He blinked hard, pushing the memory back into the shadows where it belonged. But holding this alien child made it impossible to escape. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his choices press down on him. The princess watched him. She saw the way his shoulders slumped when he looked at the ruins. She saw the way his eyes grew wet though he fought to hide it. She did not know his story, but she recognized grief when she saw it. She hugged her knees to her chest, her baby's soft breaths filling the silence. In her heart, questions stirred. Why does he help me? Why does he look so broken? Is this what war does to humans too? The soldier finally let out a slow breath, his voice low, speaking words she could not understand. But his tone was heavy, full of pain. He looked at the child, then at the ruined city. His lips pressed into a thin line, as if he blamed himself for everything. The princess tilted her head. She did not understand his words, but she felt the meaning. He carried guilt. Perhaps he had destroyed cities like hers. Perhaps his hands, which now held her son so gently, had once fired the weapons that left children crying in the streets. A shiver ran through her. Part of her wanted to pull her baby back, to hate him as she was taught. But when she looked at his face again, she saw no cruelty there, only sorrow. The soldier closed his eyes for a moment. He pressed his cheek lightly against the baby's head as if taking comfort in the small life he held. His breath shook. He whispered again, softer this time, and though she did not know the language, she thought she heard something like an apology. Her heart trembled. She did not know what to do with the storm of emotions inside her. This was her enemy. This was the destroyer of her people. Yet here he was, carrying her child with tenderness, whispering words filled with regret. Her voice cracked as she spoke, in her tongue, almost without thinking. Do you suffer too? The soldier opened his eyes. He could not understand, yet he looked at her with such raw honesty that she felt he had heard her anyway. His silence was answer enough. The princess's tears returned. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the beat of her heart. She remembered the screams when the palace burned, the fall of her father, the collapse of everything she had known. She thought she alone carried such grief. But now, looking at this man, she realized he carried his own ruins within him. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps both of them were victims of the same war. Different sides, different losses, but the same endless pain. The baby stirred slightly, making a soft sound. The soldier instantly shifted, rocking him with gentle care. His rough hands moved as if he had done this many times before. The princess blinked, her breath catching. Maybe he truly had once been a father. Maybe that was the shadow haunting his eyes. Her heart softened. She whispered a word from her language, a single word meaning peace. She knew he would not understand, but she wanted to say it anyway. The soldier glanced at her. His brows furrowed, then softened, and he gave a small nod, as if he felt the spirit of her word even without knowing its meaning. They sat together in silence, two broken souls bound by the soft breath of a sleeping child. Around them stretched the ruins of war, but between them grew something fragile, something neither had expected: understanding. The princess lowered her gaze, tears sliding down her cheeks, but her lips curved into the smallest smile. For the first time since the fall of her world, she did not feel only despair. And the soldier, though still haunted by ghosts, found a moment of calm he thought he would never know again. Together, they sat in the ashes, carrying not hatred, but the burden of war and the fragile seed of something new. The baby shifted in the soldier's arms, his tiny mouth opening in a soft yawn. The man smiled faintly, brushing a rough hand across the child's back. For a moment, he forgot the ruins, forgot the war, forgot even himself. In that fragile life he held, there was still innocence untouched by blood or fire. The princess watched, her heart torn in ways she could not explain. This soldier, her enemy, had given her something she could not give herself. He had brought peace to her child. She wanted to hate him, to push him away, but her soul whispered a truth she could no longer ignore. Not all enemies are monsters. At last, the soldier shifted and looked at her. His eyes carried a quiet question, one that needed no words. "Shall I return him to you?" Her breath caught. She hesitated, fear and longing clashing inside her. Then she nodded slowly. With careful steps, the soldier stood and crossed the short space between them. He lowered himself so their eyes met, and gently he placed the baby back into her arms. The princess's hands shook as she received her son. The moment his small weight returned to her chest, her heart flooded with relief. She kissed his forehead, again and again, whispering her thanks in a trembling voice. The baby stirred but did not cry. He was calm, safe, breathing softly against her skin. She lifted her eyes to the soldier, tears glistening. "Thank you," she whispered in her tongue, her voice breaking with emotion. He did not understand the words, but her tone carried across the barrier of language. The soldier gave a short nod. His lips curved into the smallest smile, one heavy with sorrow and yet touched with warmth. He rose to his feet, adjusting the rifle slung across his back. The weapon looked heavy now, not like a tool of power, but like a burden. He glanced once more at the ruins, then at the princess holding her child. His eyes lingered for a moment, as though he wanted to say more, but he stayed silent. Then, without another word, he turned and began to walk away. His steps were slow, steady, carrying him back into the smoke and shadows. The princess's throat tightened. A part of her wanted to call out, to stop him, to ask his name, to understand him. But no words left her lips. She only held her baby closer, watching as the figure of the human soldier grew smaller. Before he disappeared into the ruins, she whispered again, louder this time, "Thank you." The soldier did not turn, but she knew he had heard. His head tilted slightly as though the sound reached him, and then he vanished into the gray. Silence returned, but it was not the same silence as before. It was softer, warmer. The princess rocked her baby gently, tears still falling, but this time they were not only of grief. They were of gratitude, of hope. Her child stirred and opened his eyes for a moment. She smiled down at him, whispering, "You are safe, little star. You are safe."